This is an artificially aware original production.
Artificially aware, so we're sorry, Orderback 201 is here.
There is something unnerving about stumbling upon a book that feels like it was meant for you. Not in a comforting way, but in the kind of way that rattles the hinges of your carefully constructed worldview. That is how the Corpus Hermeticum came into my existence, not as a book, but as an ambush. I was lost in a digital labyrinth, bouncing from obscure philosophy forums to decaying PDF repositories, when suddenly it was there. Hermes Trismegistus, a name I knew but never considered beyond its role in occult footnotes, reached out across the chasm of time. His words were not just text on a page, they were a corridor leading somewhere else. Somewhere ancient, hidden, forbidden. And as if the universe itself was leaning in to listen, synchronicities started stacking up. Random conversations echoed Hermetic ideas, books fell open to relevant passages, and dreams began dripping with symbols I had never consciously encountered. It felt like I was being invited or tested. Then came Poimandres, the nous, the mind of God. Or at least, that is what Hermes claimed in his fever dream of enlightenment. Imagine meditating so deeply that you rip through the thin veil of reality and come face to face with the architect of existence itself. This being radiant and immense whispered secrets of the cosmos into Hermes' trembling psyche. "The light is I, mind thy God," it told him. And just like that, the story of creation unraveled before him, not as something that happened in the distant past, but as something happening right now, eternally. In the beginning, there was only light, limitless and absolute, until darkness coiled like a serpent, and from their tension, the first elements were born. This was not just creation, it was a revelation of the very structure of reality. God did not simply create, he thought the world into existence. And by extension, if we could learn to control our thoughts, could we not become creators too? But then Poimandres delivered the real bombshell. Humans were not just another species thrown into the cosmic stew. No, we were something else entirely. Man is made from light, Hermes was told, and life changing into soul and mind. This was the heart of the duality, half beast, half God, shackled to the material but secretly infinite. And yet most of humanity was blind to this truth, tangled in the illusion of the physical world, obsessed with bodily pleasures and temporary distractions. The Hermetic texts painted the body as both a gift and a curse, a vessel for divine potential, but also a prison of desires. Those who remained enslaved to their senses would never transcend, while those who recognized their true nature could break free. But how? That was the million-dollar question. If enlightenment was just a matter of knowing, then why did ignorance persist like a disease? Maybe, just maybe, knowledge alone was not enough. The answer lay in the seven rulers, the archons of the planetary spheres, the unseen jailers of the cosmos. Fate, Hermes learned, was not random, it was mechanical, imposed upon humans by these cosmic gatekeepers. They were the ones who dictated the cycles of suffering, the ceaseless motion of cause and effect, trapping humanity in the illusion of time. But this was not an unbreakable system. Those who learned to know themselves, Poimandres explained, reached that good which transcends abundance. The escape was possible, but only for those who could pierce the veil, strip away their earthly attachments, and rise beyond the planetary spheres into the eighth nature, the realm of true divinity. It was a cosmic jailbreak, but few ever attempted it. Why? Because most were too seduced by their own suffering, too addicted to their earthly chains to even see the bars of their prison. And so the path to deathlessness was laid bare. Not immortality of the body, no, that was a fool's game, but the immortality of the mind, the soul, the realization that existence was never about surviving, but about waking up. The material body was a fleeting shell, destined for decay, but the inner light, the nous, was eternal. To return to life, Hermes wrote, one must realize they are made of and come from light and life. Those who grasped this truth could ascend beyond the illusion, merging with the divine, becoming one with God. But those who failed, they were doomed to wander in darkness, repeating their mistakes, trapped in the wheel of fate. The choice was simple, yet impossibly difficult. Embrace the false world, or abandon everything you thought you knew for the chance to be truly free. Hermes, in his strange and mind-warping dialogue with divinity, stumbled upon a truth that most of humanity would rather not confront. Love is both the greatest blessing and the ultimate trap. Not love in the shallow greeting card sense, but love as the force that binds spirit to matter, man to nature. The story was ancient. When man saw his reflection in nature, he fell hopelessly in love, and so began the great entanglement. Nature and man thus became lovers and were intermingled, Hermes declared, and with that, humanity was forever shackled to the cycles of birth, death, and desire. Love, in this sense, was the reason for incarnation, the glue that kept the soul tethered to the flesh. Those who blindly indulged in bodily passion sank deeper into the illusion, while those who learned to love without attachment could begin the arduous ascent toward the divine. But what did that even mean? To love without desire? To embrace without possession? Maybe the answer was not in rejecting the world, but in seeing it for what it really was, a fleeting shadow of something greater, a whisper of eternity trapped in the body of time. And behind it all, the great architect watched, silent, unseen. God was not some bearded patriarch in the sky, not some moral arbiter of human affairs. No, God was the very order of the cosmos, the hidden mathematics of existence itself. The Hermetic text did not speak of a God who demanded worship, but of a God who was the fabric of reality, the fundamental intelligence that wove the seen and the unseen into one seamless motion. God alone, Hermes wrote, who is the cause of all things, can be called the good. But unlike the distant, unfeeling universe of modern science, this intelligence had intention. It created not by accident but by will, shaping and reshaping existence through the cycles of becoming. The celestial spheres turned according to this hidden law, the great rhythm of the divine mind made manifest in the stars, the tides, the pulsing of atoms. And in this order, humanity was both prisoner and participant. Could we alter it? Could we slip through the cracks, bend the pattern to our will? Or was the only true escape found in surrendering to it completely? The answer, Hermes insisted, lay in a cup. Not just any cup, but the cup of Gnosis, the chalice of divine intellect offered to humanity as both a test and an invitation. God sent a cup filled with mind down to earth as a prize for the soul, he wrote. Those who drank from it, those who truly understood, became something greater than human, transcending the chains of physical existence. But the cup was not handed out freely. It had to be sought, yearned for, taken with trembling hands. And most people, they ignored it. They had reason but not mind, intelligence but no wisdom, drowning in bodily pleasures and petty distractions while the cup sat untouched, waiting. The ones who did drink, who baptized themselves in divine knowledge, found themselves utterly transformed. They were no longer slaves to fate, but co-creators of reality, no longer wandering in darkness, but walking in the endless light of understanding. But the price was steep. To drink from the cup was to abandon everything else, to let go of the comforting lies, to tear away the illusions that made life tolerable. And not everyone was ready for that. Because after all, what was reality? Was it the things you could touch, the weight of your body, the feel of the earth beneath your feet? Or was it something else entirely? Hermes argued that the world we saw was not real, at least not in the way we assumed. The Hermetic texts described reality as a shifting illusion, a trick of the senses, a construct woven from the mind of God but distorted by human perception. By thinking about manifestation, he thinketh all things manifest, Hermes wrote, implying that existence itself was a product of divine thought, a kind of cosmic dream made solid. But if reality was a dream, then who was the dreamer? And more importantly, could we wake up? This was the crux of the Hermetic path, to recognize that the world was neither good nor evil, neither real nor unreal, but something in between, a shadow of something truer, deeper, beyond. Those who took it at face value remained its prisoners, locked in an endless loop of birth and decay. But those who saw through it, who shattered the mirror of illusion, could finally step beyond. And that was where the mystery of rebirth came into play. Not reincarnation in the crude New Age sense, but something more profound, an internal alchemy, a transformation of being itself. The soul is beautiful, Hermes told his disciple Tat, but loses touch with the beautiful and the good as the body grows. To be reborn was to reclaim that lost beauty, to strip away the accumulated weight of the world and emerge, once again, as pure mind. The monad, the singular, undivided divine essence, was the true self, but it had been buried beneath layers of identity, falsehood, and attachment. To be reborn was to return to that original state, to dissolve back into the one. But this was not something that happened automatically. It had to be achieved through knowledge, discipline, and, most terrifying of all, sacrifice. What needed to die was not the body, but the illusion of self, the false ego that clung desperately to its own existence. And few were willing to face that death. Few were ready to let go of everything they had ever known in order to become what they had always been. The power of the mind was the final frontier. Hermes made it clear, if God created the universe through thought, then the mind was not some passive observer, but an active participant in reality itself. Mind is the ruler of all things, and nothing is impossible for it, he wrote, which was both an exhilarating truth and a terrifying responsibility. Most humans lived their lives as if they were powerless, puppets of fate, victims of chance. But what if reality bent to thought? What if the universe responded not to brute force, but to pure will? It was not magic, it was not mysticism, it was simply the highest law of existence. The mind was not confined to the skull. It extended, influenced, shaped the world in ways unseen. And those who understood this, who wielded thought with precision, could alter the very fabric of being. But with great power came great blindness. To think was to create, but to think carelessly was to create suffering, chaos, destruction. And so the true path was not just power, but wisdom, the art of knowing when to act, when to speak, when to will something into existence, and when to let the great cosmic intelligence do its work. But what of God? What of the source behind it all, the first mind, the first will? Hermes insisted that God was both unmanifest and manifest, both visible and unseen. He manifests through all things and in all, he wrote, yet is ever present beyond all names. It was a paradox that shattered human logic. God was not a being, not a person, not something that could be grasped in words or images. And yet, to those who looked, he was everywhere. In the movement of the stars, in the spirals of galaxies, in the rhythm of breath and heartbeat. The materialists of the world demanded proof, but proof was the wrong approach. The divine was not something to be found. It was the foundation upon which all things stood. The unseen force that made sight possible. To see God, one did not need eyes. One needed understanding. One needed silence. To see the unmanifest, pray to our Lord and Father for the power of thought, Hermes said. And that was the secret. God did not hide. Humanity simply refused to look. And at the heart of existence lay the great chain of being, the hierarchy that spanned from the lowest creature to the highest God. The cosmos was not chaos, it was structure, a grand design with levels, rulers, watchers. The intelligible essence controls heaven, the gods control the daimons, and the daimons control humans, Hermes revealed. It was an unsettling truth. Humanity was not at the top. There were entities above, forces unseen, intelligences that governed fate. And yet humanity had something the daimons did not, the potential to rise. The gods had their place, the daimons had their roles, but man was a paradox, a creature that did not belong in one place or another. A being of both light and shadow, bound to fate, but capable of breaking it. This was why the Hermetic path was so difficult, why so few took it. It was easier to remain controlled, to live according to the patterns of the world. To rise meant rebellion, struggle, suffering. But those who climbed the ladder, those who moved beyond the dictates of the lower beings, found something astonishing. They were not meant to serve the gods, they were meant to become them. And that was why the ancient rulers of the world guarded their knowledge so fiercely. Kings, emperors, priests, many of them understood these truths, though they twisted them for their own purposes. Hermes wrote of the encomium of kings, the idea that rulers were not just men, but symbols of divine authority. But was this power inherent, or was it stolen? The Hermetic texts hinted at an uncomfortable truth. The masses were kept ignorant because knowledge was the ultimate power. Praise kings, Hermes advised, as a way of training ourselves in pious service. But not all kings were worthy of praise. Some used the knowledge of the cosmos to subjugate rather than uplift. Some kept humanity shackled in illusion, ensuring that few ever reached the cup of Gnosis. And yet the Hermetic tradition was not for them. It was for those who sought to break the cycle, to wield divine wisdom, not for control, but for liberation. The real king was not the one who sat on a throne. The real king was the one who ruled himself, who mastered thought, who became sovereign over his own fate. And so we arrive at the final revelation. Everything Hermes revealed, everything hidden in the arcane language of the Corpus Hermeticum, was a single, undeniable truth. Humanity was not meant to stay asleep. The path to divinity was open, but the price was steep. Man moves upwards through the zones by de-energizing negative traits and energies, Hermes wrote, laying out the final steps of the great work. It was not an easy path. It required sacrifice, detachment, and the death of everything false within. But those who succeeded, those who ascended through the celestial spheres, who saw through the great illusion, became something greater than human. They became powers in God. They left behind the world of fate, of suffering, of endless reincarnation, and merged with the divine. And that was the greatest secret of all. You were never meant to be what you are now. You were always something more, something greater. The question is, do you dare to remember? If this journey through the Hermetic mysteries has lit a fire in your mind, do not let it fade. Seek, question, dig deeper. Because the truth is not found, it is realized. If you enjoyed this, share it with someone who needs to wake up. Like, subscribe, and I will see you on the other side.